He called me a servant, in the house I built with my own 2 hands. My daughter just watched, then told me I should apologize. They thought they had broken me. They thought the old man was finished. They were about to find out that even old wood can burn. If you're listening to this, subscribe to the channel and let me know where you're watching from. It helps more than you know. My name is Robert, and I need to tell you how my sanctuary became my prison. The crystal chandelier hung above the dining table. My wife Elizabeth loved it. She said it caught the light like diamonds. Now, it just cast cold, sterile shadows across the room. It was a Tuesday. Dinners used to mean laughter, warmth. Now they were silent battlegrounds. I built this house. 40 years of sweat, deals, and sleepless nights in the real estate business. Every brick, every marble floor was a piece of me. I did it all for Sarah, my daughter. I wanted her to have everything. I never imagined everything would include a monster living under my roof. David. My son-in-law sat across from me. He swirled the whiskey in his glass. He was handsome, I suppose. Sharp jaw, expensive suit. The kind of look that hides something hungry underneath. When Sarah first brought him home, he was perfect. Too perfect. He admired my success. He asked for advice. He looked at Sarah like she was the only woman in the world. Sarah was glowing, happier than I'd seen her since her mother died. I had doubts, a cold knot in my stomach, but I wanted her happiness more than I trusted my instincts. It was a mistake that was already starting to choke me. I didn't just let him into my house. I let him into my life, my business. I gave him a high-level position, Vice President of Development, a title he hadn't earned. He's brilliant, Dad, Sarah insisted. He just needs a chance. I gave him that chance. I gave him access to my contacts. My world. I thought I was securing my daughter's future. I didn't realize I was feeding a snake. And slowly the poison began to spread. It started small. It always does. The first thing he took was my study, the heart of my home, where I built my empire. I walked in one Monday morning. The air felt different, cold. My leather chair, the one Elizabeth bought me for our anniversary, was gone, replaced by a modern steel throne. My family photos were missing from the desk. I found them later, boxed up in the garage, covered in dust. The silence in the room felt deliberate, hostile. David walked in, not knocking. He held a cup of espresso, looking completely at ease in the room he had stolen. "Robert," he said, his voice smooth as silk. "Hope you don't mind. I needed a workspace that suited my style." He waved a dismissive hand around the room. "Your things were just cluttering it up. Clutter, my life, my memories. Clutter." Sarah appeared behind him, nervously twisting her wedding ring. It was a habit she developed after the wedding. "It looks amazing, doesn't it, Dad?" "So modern." I looked at her. She avoided my eyes. "It does," I lied. The words tasted like ash. I took my files and moved into the small guest room upstairs. I told myself it didn't matter, but it mattered more than anything. Then came the staff changes. Mrs. Gable, my housekeeper for 20 years, was let go. She practically raised Sarah. I found her crying in the kitchen, her bags packed by the service door. "Mrs. Gable, what's happening?" I asked, alarmed. She flinched when David entered the room. He leaned against the granite countertop, arms crossed. He didn't even look at her. "She was too slow, Robert," David said dismissively. "We need efficiency here. I've hired a new service. They start tomorrow." "Slow? She's part of the family," I argued, my voice tight. "Family doesn't run a multi-million-dollar household effectively," David retorted. "This isn't a charity, Robert. We need to maintain standards." He looked at Mrs. Gable, a cold, dead stare. "You can go now." She scurried out, terrified. She didn't even say goodbye. The house didn't feel warm anymore. It felt cold, sterile, like a hotel. David's hotel. The master bedroom was next. The room I shared with Elizabeth for 30 years. I came home from a short business trip. The hallway was quiet, too quiet. I opened the door to my room. My clothes were gone. My books were missing. The faint scent of Elizabeth's perfume, which I had clung to, was gone, replaced by David's expensive, overpowering cologne. My heart hammered in my chest. This felt like a violation, a desecration. I found Sarah in the living room, arranging flowers, white lilies, funereal, "What happened in my room?" I asked, struggling to keep the tremor out of my voice. She didn't turn around. David thought it was silly for the biggest room to be empty most of the time. "I live there, Sarah." She turned, her face pale, her eyes wide with anxiety. "We're a married couple, Dad. We need the space." "You have the guest wing. It's lovely. It has a beautiful view." "It's not my room," I said, the words choked with emotion. "Please don't make this difficult, Dad," she pleaded. "David gets stressed so easily. It's just a room." It wasn't just a room, it was my sanctuary. He was erasing me piece by piece, and my daughter was holding the eraser. The isolation deepened at the company, too. I tried to stay involved, but David was always there, blocking me. I started noticing things. Meetings I wasn't invited to. Decisions made without my approval. Whispers that stopped when I entered the room. I confronted David in the office, his new office, my old office. "David, we need to discuss the downtown development," I started. He didn't look up from his computer. "It's handled, Robert. Handled." "I'm still the chairman," I reminded him. He chuckled. "A cold, dry sound. A title, Robert. A formality. The board agrees with my vision. They appreciate my aggressive approach." He looked up, his eyes cold. "Your methods are outdated." Outdated. The words stung more than any insult. I realized then how much control I had lost. He had charmed the board. He had stolen my company. From the inside. I wasn't just losing my house. I was losing everything. I started watching him closely. I noticed the late-night meetings at the house. Strange men in expensive suits. Men who looked at me like I was the gardener. One evening, a man named Mr. Thorne arrived. I knew Thorne. He was a competitor, a shark who specialized in hostile takeovers. He had cold eyes and a predatory smile. David introduced him as a consultant. "Robert, this is Mr. Thorne. He's helping us restructure the business," David said, guiding Thorne into the study. They didn't ask me to join them. They closed the door in my face. I stood in the hallway, listening to the muffled sounds of their laughter. They were carving up my empire, and I was locked out. I also noticed the sudden departure of a junior accountant. A young man named Jenkins. Bright kid. Meticulous. Jenkins had come to me a week before he was fired. Nervous. Looking over his shoulder. "Mr. Robert," he had whispered, "I think there might be some irregularities in the downtown project accounts." Before I could ask more, David appeared. "Robert, don't bother Jenkins. He has work to do." A week later, Jenkins was gone. "Incompetence," David had said. Now I wasn't so sure. The air in my house was thick with secrets, and I was suffocating. Back to that Tuesday dinner. The tension was like smoke before a fire. The downtown development deal, it was my drit, my vision. 3 months of grueling negotiations. Sleepless nights. I secured the terms. I made the calls. David's only job was to deliver the paperwork. Under the cold chandelier light, David made his announcement. "The downtown development deal is nearly closed," he said, looking not at me, but at Sarah. He swirled his whiskey. He took a sip. The silence stretched. He was savoring the moment. "I managed to negotiate the terms we wanted," he continued, his voice dripping with false modesty. "It wasn't easy, dealing with those bureaucrats." I froze. The fork in my hand felt heavy. "He managed to negotiate." It was a blatant lie, a theft of my work, right in front of me. I looked at Sarah. She knew the truth. She knew how hard I had worked. Sarah smiled faintly, picking at her salad. "That's wonderful, David." She paused. Then she looked at me. Her eyes were dull. "Dad, isn't that wonderful?" She met my eyes for a second, then looked away. In that moment, I knew she had chosen him. She had chosen the lie. "It is," I said, my voice flat. I thought I was keeping the peace. I was just being a coward. Dinner continued in strained silence. David kept boasting, talking about his achievements, his plans for the future. His future, a future where I didn't exist. The staff moved quietly. They sensed the danger. It radiated off David like heat. He drained his glass. It was his third, maybe fourth. He was getting drunk, And when David got drunk, he got mean. He held out his empty glass, not towards the serving staff, towards me. The crystal glass hung in the air. A silent command. The room went completely still. "Robert, get me another," he ordered. The silence deepened. It felt the air had been sucked out of the room. The staff froze. Sarah looked down at her plate, her knuckles white as she gripped her fork. This was new. He had been cruel in private. But this public humiliation, this was a declaration of war. He wasn't just asking for a drink. He was demanding obedience, marking his territory. I looked at the glass, then at him. My reflection stared back at me from his cold, dark eyes. I saw what he saw, an old man, a tired man, a man who had been diminished, in his own. How did I let this happen? Something inside me shifted. A line had been crossed, and I realized, if I didn't stop him now, I would be lost forever. "I think you've had enough, David," I said. My voice was quiet, but firm. It surprised even me. The temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. His eyes widened in disbelief. For a fraction of a second, he looked stunned. Then the disbelief curdled into rage. The mask slipped completely. The polished veneer cracked, revealing the ugliness beneath. "Excuse me," he spat. The word dripped with venom. "You're drunk," I stated simply. "I will not pour you more whiskey." I wasn't yelling. The truth was loud enough. What happened next felt like slow motion. David's hand shot out, fast, violent. The heavy crystal glass flew through the air. It wasn't a toss. It was a projectile. Propelled by pure malice, it struck me, squarely on the cheekbone. The sound of shattering glass echoed through the dining room. Sharp, violent, followed by a sharp, searing pain. I felt the warmth of blood trickling down my face. Thick, hot. "Sarah," gasped, her hands flying to her mouth. Her eyes were wide with horror, but she didn't move. David was on his feet now, looming over me, his face contorted in a snarl. He wasn't sorry. He was furious that I had dared to defy him. "How dare you refuse me?" he roared. The sound vibrated through the room, bouncing off the walls I built. He leaned closer. I could smell the stale bourbon on his breath. "You forget your place in this house," he hissed, spraying spittle across the table. "You are nothing. I run this family. I run this business. You are here because I allow it." He was rewriting history, erasing me completely. But he wasn't finished. He saved the worst for last. He stood up straight, chest puffed out, like a conquering general. He looked at Sarah, as if expecting applause. And then he delivered the final blow. The words that shattered not just the glass, but any illusion of family I had left. "Servants must obey," he yelled. The words hung in the air, ugly, irrevocable. He hadn't broken me. He had woken me up. He stood there, breathing heavily. He sneered at me one last time. A look of pure contempt. Then he stormed out. We heard the front door slam. The sound echoed like a gunshot, followed by the roar of his sports car. The expensive one, the one I had bought him, tearing down the driveway. The silence that followed was deafening. The only sound was the dripping of my blood on the marble floor. The staff rushed forward, offering towels. First aid. Their faces were pale. I waved them away. "Clean the mess," I said. My voice trembled slightly. I touched my cheek. The cut was deep. The physical pain was nothing compared to the gaping wound in my heart. "Servants must obey." The words echoed in my mind. Sarah finally moved. She rushed to my side, sobbing. "Dad, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry," she cried, reaching for me. I looked at her, my daughter, my only child, and I saw a stranger, a weak, terrified stranger. She hadn't defended me. She hadn't stopped him. And now she was making excuses. "He didn't mean it," she pleaded, her eyes wide and desperate. "It's the stress from work, the downtown deal. He's just overwhelmed. Stress." That was her excuse for his abuse. Her excuse for defending the monster who had just assaulted her father. "He meant every word, Sarah," I said. The realization settled heavily in my chest. It felt like a tomb closing. "And by defending him, so do you." Her face crumpled. "Dad, no. That's not true, isn't it? I asked. I pulled away from her. I couldn't stand to look at her. I walked out of the dining room. I left her there, standing in the wreckage of our family. I went into the small upstairs study, the one I had been banished to, and I locked the door. I sat in the dark. The pain in my cheek was a dull throb. I had allowed this monster into my home, fed him, empowered him, and in return he had destroyed my family, stolen my dignity, and I had let him. I slumped into the chair. I felt old, useless. Maybe he was right. Maybe I was nothing. I looked at the photograph on my desk. Elizabeth. Her smiling face seemed to mock me. What would you say if you saw me now, Liz? Cowering, bleeding, humiliated. She would tell me to fight. Elizabeth was the steel in my spine. I realized then that my passivity, my desire to keep the peace for Sarah's sake, had been a mistake. A catastrophic mistake. It hadn't saved my family. It had poisoned it. I thought I was being patient. I was just being weak. The blood on my collar hardened. The pain crystallized into resolve. A cold, hard resolve I hadn't felt in years. I was not a servant. This was my house, my company, my life, and it was time I took it back. David thought he was the king. He was about to learn that kings can be overthrown. I picked up the phone and dialed a number I knew by heart. Michael? It's Robert. My voice was cold, steady. I need you here. Now. Michael Sullivan. My lawyer. My consigliere. The only man I trusted implicitly. We had been through wars together. He was sharp, ruthless, and fiercely loyal. He didn't ask questions. He just said, I'm on my way. The line went dead. The war had begun. Michael arrived within the hour. He walked into my study, his face grim. He always carried an old leather briefcase, battered from years of use. He took one look at my bandaged cheek and the fire in my eyes. And he knew. What happened, Robert? He asked, opening the briefcase. He crossed the line, I said. He assaulted me, in front of everyone. I want him out, I said, leaning forward. Not just out of the house, out of the company, out of our lives, completely. I want him erased. Michael hesitated. He polished his glasses, a habit he had when calculating risks. Robert, this will be messy. Very messy. He's married to Sarah. They have joint assets. His employment contract is ironclad. You insisted on it, remember? To protect Sarah. The irony was bitter. The contract meant to protect my daughter was now protecting the man who abused her father. I don't care how messy it is, I said, my voice dropping low. I want it done by morning. Michael raised an eyebrow. By morning? Robert, that's nearly impossible. We need evidence. We need a strategy. We don't have time, said. He needs to understand that his world can vanish overnight. Michael looked at me. He saw the resolve. He nodded slowly. All right, Robert. If you want a war, we'll give him a war. But we need ammunition. We need grounds for termination, Michael said. The assault is enough for a restraining order. But to break the contract, we need something criminal. Something related to the business. He paused. Robert, remember that background check we did on David when he first started dating Sarah? The one you told me to bury. I remember this. I didn't want to believe anything bad about him. Another mistake. What was in it? I asked, my voice tight. Michael pulled a file. David wasn't just ambitious, Robert. He was desperate. He had massive gambling debts before he met Sarah. Over $500,000. He was on the verge of bankruptcy. He was being investigated for fraud at his previous firm. The heir left the room. He didn't love Sarah. He targeted her. He saw her as a meal ticket. My blood ran cold. I had been such a blind fool. He needed access to money. Fast, I said.
Exactly, Michael said. And I've suspected for a while that he's been cooking the books. Small irregularities. Nothing major, but consistent. The accountant, I said. The memory surfacing. Jenkins, the young man David fired. He tried to warn me. He mentioned irregularities in the downtown project. Michael nodded. Jenkins? I remember the name. Where is he now? I don't know, I admitted. But we need to find him. If he has proof, We can bury David. Michael made a call. It was late, but he had connections. Investigators.
People who could find anyone. They're on it, Michael said, hanging up. We'll find Jenkins. In the meantime, we prepare. For the next few hours, we wake. The plan was ruthless, meticulous, swift. I had built an empire by being decisive. Tonight, I would dismantle a tyranny with the same precision. We drafted the documents, termination of employment, citing gross misconduct, and the pending investigation into breach of fiduciary duty, revocation of his access to all company accounts and properties, a restraining order, and the eviction notice. What about Sarah? Michael asked gently. This was the hardest part, the part that hurt more than the cut on my cheek. I looked at the door, knowing she was upstairs, probably crying, waiting for David to return, waiting for me to apologize. She will have to choose, I said. The words tasted like ash. If she stays on my terms. If she goes with him, she goes with nothing. It was harsh, but necessary. I had to break the spell he had over her. We prepared those documents too, freezing the joint accounts, cutting off her allowances. A stark choice, loyalty or survival. It was 3 a.m. Michael's phone buzzed. It was the investigator. He listened for a moment. A slow smile spread across his face. They found Jenkins, Michael said. He's scared, hiding out in a motel. But he's willing to talk. And he kept copies of everything. The proof we needed. The weapon that would destroy him. If this story has your heart racing, make sure to hit the like button and subscribe. Every click helps us keep uncovering stories that deserve to be heard. Jenkins sent the files, encrypted. Michael opened them. His eyes widened as he scrolled through the documents. It's worse than we thought, Michael muttered. He wasn't just stealing, he was planning a hostile takeover. My blood ran cold. What? He was working with Thorne, the consultant. David was leveraging the company's assets to secure massive loans. They were planning to buy out the majority shareholders, using your own money against you. The depth of his betrayal was staggering. He wasn't just a parasite, he was a predator. He was planning to devour everything I had built. He needed Sarah's shares, I realized, the horror dawning on me. That's why he married her. It was all a setup, from the beginning. Michael nodded grimly. The monster had a plan, and according to these timelines it was almost complete. They were going to make the move next week, but not tonight. Tonight, the plan died. We need to execute this now, I said, while he's still asleep. I called James, my head of security. He arrived in the study minutes later. James was ex-military, built like bank, loyal, dependable. Sir, you needed me? He looked at my bandaged cheek, his jaw tightening. James, I need you to do something for me, I said, and I need your absolute discretion. I laid out the plan. The locks, the alarms, the packing, the eviction. James looked grave. Sir, David returned an hour ago. He's upstairs, in the master suite. He's extremely intoxicated. The master suite. My bedroom, the final insult. Good, I said. It will make things easier. Sir, are you sure? James asked, his loyalty conflicting with the sheer audacity of the plan. The fallout. Mrs. Sarah. James, I interrupted, my voice low and steady. Who signs your checks? Who protected your family when your daughter was sick? Who gave you a second chance when no one else would? He looked down, ashamed. You did, sir. Then do your job, I commanded. Protect this house from the enemy within. James nodded, the conflict in his eyes replaced by resolve. Yes, sir. The operation began. James and his team moved silently through the house. Like ghosts, they went upstairs, to the master suite. I waited in the study with Michael. The silence stretched, tense, heavy. I could hear the faint sounds of movement upstairs. Drawers opening, closets sliding. The purge was underway. They worked quickly, efficiently. They packed every designer suit, every expensive watch, every piece of jewelry David owned. The symbols of his stolen life. They didn't miss a single cufflink. While they worked, Michael and I were busy. We severed every digital tie David had to my world. His company email was deleted. His access cards were deactivated. His phone plan was canceled. He was being erased in real time. We changed the alarm codes. We changed the locks on the gates. We changed the combination to the safe. The safe that held my will. The will that left everything to Sarah and David. Not anymore. I opened the safe and removed the will. I handed it to Michael. We need a new one, immediately. The past was gone. The future was mine to reshape. At 5 a.m., the task was complete. James returned to the study. "It's done, sir," he reported. "His belongings are by the front gate. He's still asleep. Passed out cold." "Thank you, James," I said, feeling a wave of relief. The first phase was complete. Now for the hard part. I called the local police station. I explained the situation. The assault, the embezzlement, the hostile takeover. I didn't hold back. I had donated donorously to the police fund for years, built relationships, earned respect. They were eager to assist. 2 officers arrived just as the first rays of dawn were painting the sky. Officer Miller, a man I knew well, greeted me with a nod. "Everything in order, Mr. Robert?" His voice calm and professional. "Yes, officer. We have a situation, and we have evidence." The final piece of the puzzle arrived shortly after, the tow truck. The grinding sound of the engine cut through the quiet morning air. I watched as they hooked up David's luxury sports car. The Ferrari, the symbol of his arrogance. It hung from the tow truck, helpless, impotent. Just like its owner, the stage was set. The sun was rising on a new day, a day of reckoning. I stood by the gate with Michael, James, and the officers, waiting. The air was cold. Crisp. I felt a strange sense of calm. The calm before the final storm. Upstairs, in the master suite, David was waking up. I could imagine his confusion, the hangover pounding in his head. He probably reached for his phone, to check his emails, to start his day, only to find his access denied. His phone dead, his world disconnected. We heard a noise from the house, a door slamming, footsteps rushing down the stairs, loud, panicked. He must have gone to the balcony, the one overlooking the driveway, the one that offered the best view of his kingdom. And he saw it. He saw his designer suitcases piled by the curb like garbage. He saw his Ferrari hanging from the tow truck. He saw Michael holding the stack of papers. He saw the police officers, and he saw me standing there, calm, resolute, the servant who had dared to disobey. The scream that ripped through the morning air was not a sound of anger. It was a sound of pure, unadulterated horror. It was the sound of a man realizing that his entire world had vanished overnight. He hadn't just lost his possessions. He had lost his power. He rushed downstairs, pounding on the front door. "Robert, open the door," he demanded, his voice high-pitched. Terrified, but the locks were changed. He couldn't get out. He was trapped. In the cage he had built for me, I walked up to the door. I could see his face through the glass. Contorted in disbelief, he was still wearing the clothes from last night. Rumpled, stained, pathetic. "You are no longer welcome in this house, David," I said. My voice was clear, steady. "I am your son-in-law." "This is my home. You can't do this," he shrieked, pounding on the glass. His voice cracked. He was losing control. The mask was gone. The monster was exposed. And the monster was terrified. Michael stepped forward, professional, detached. "Mr. David," he said, his voice loud enough to be heard through the glass. "You have been served with an eviction notice. Your employment with the company has been terminated, effective immediately. Your access to all accounts has been frozen." David stared at him, dumbfounded. "Terminated? Frozen? You can't. I have rights. I have a contract." "You breached that contract," I said, "when you assaulted me, when you stole from me, when you tried to take everything I built." I mentioned the gambling debts, the hostile takeover. "Thorne, Jenkins," his eyes widened. He knew we knew the game was over. We have the proof, David, Michael added. The evidence is being transferred to the police as we speak. You are facing multiple felony charges: embezzlement, fraud, corporate espionage. The police officers moved closer. Officer Miller nodded at James. James opened the door. David stumbled out, his eyes darting around like a trapped animal. He looked cornered, dispraise. "Sarah," he screamed, looking up at the windows. "Sarah, help me. Your father has gone mad." His voice echoed in the quiet morning. A desperate plea, a final manipulation. I looked up too. Sarah was standing at the window. Her face was pale, her eyes red from crying. She looked at David, then at me. The moment stretched, tense, silent. This was her choice, him or me, the lie or the truth. And she did nothing. She just watched, silent, still. Her silence was her answer. David saw it too. He realized she wasn't coming. She wasn't going to save him. He was alone. The arrogance, the entitlement, the cruelty. It all crumbled, leaving behind a pathetic, broken man. The officers moved in. They didn't just escort him to the gate. They arrested him. "David, you are under arrest," Officer Miller announced, handcuffing him. The click of the metal was the most satisfying sound I had ever heard. He struggled at first, cursed, pleaded, but it was useless. He was powerless. As they led him past me, he stopped. He looked at me, his eyes filled with pure, unadulterated hatred. "You will regret this, old man," he spat. "I will destroy you. You already tried," I said, meeting his gaze. "And you failed." They put him in the back of the police car. His suitcases remained by the curb. A broken king in a kingdom of dust. The tow truck pulled away, taking his car with it. The sound of the engine faded down the street. The police car followed shortly after. The flashing lights disappeared around the corner. The silence returned, but this time it was different. It wasn't heavy. It was the silence of peace. Michael placed a comforting hand on my shoulder. "It's done, Robert. You're safe. The company is secure. The evidence against him is overwhelming. He's going to prison for a long time. Thorne will likely face charges too. Am I safe?" I asked, looking up at the window where Sarah still stood. The victory felt hollow. I had won the war, but I had lost the battle for my daughter's heart. I walked back into the house. It felt empty now, quiet. But for the first time in years, it felt like my own. I went into the dining room. The mess from last night was cleaned up. The shattered glass was gone, the bloodstains removed, but the memory remained. I sat down at the table, at my seat, the head of the table, the one David had taken from me. I touched the bandage on my cheek. The pain was still there. A dull throb, a reminder of the price I had paid. Sarah came downstairs an hour later. She looked hesitant, afraid. She stood in the doorway of the dining room, clutching her robe. "Dad," she whispered. Her voice was small, broken. I looked at her. My daughter, the child I had raised, the woman who had broken my heart. "He's gone?" I said. She nodded. Tears welled up in her eyes. She walked slowly to the table and sat down, across from me. The distance between us felt like an ocean. "They arrested him," she whispered. "They said he stole millions."
That he was trying to take the company, that he never loved me. "It's true," I said. She started crying, deep, racking sobs. The sound of her grief filled the room, the sound of her illusion shattering. I didn't comfort her. I couldn't. She needed to feel the pain. She needed to face the truth she had ignored for so long. "What now?" she asked, looking down at her hands. "Now," I said, my voice heavy with the weight of my decisions. "We heal or we don't, but we do it on my terms." She didn't say anything. She just sat there, silent. The choice was still hers, to face the truth or to run from it. I had lost a daughter, perhaps forever. The pain of that loss was sharp, deep, but I had regained my dignity, my self-respect, my life. I had proven that I was not a servant. I was the master of my own house. I rehired Jenkins,
made him head of accounting. I brought Mrs. Gable back. The house started to feel warm again. I took back control of my company. The board, ashamed and terrified of the legal fallout, me back with open arms. And as I sat there in the quiet dining room, watching the sunlight stream through the windows, I knew the price of freedom was high. It had cost me my family, but the cost of servitude was higher. It would have cost me my soul. The old wood had burned, and from the ashes I was reborn. I was finally free. Thanks for listening. Please rate our story in the comments. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to subscribe. Your support means a lot because your time matters.